The Millionaire and the Beggar, a story of the black man's journey. Malik's world was a splash of colors fading fast. New Orleans poured life all around him, jazz spilling from cracked doors, neon signs buzzing, streets smeared with paintings and footsteps. But inside his tiny studio, squeezed between peeling walls and the stench of yesterday's rain, Malik felt like a ghost. The city thrummed, loud, bright, alive. But he was invisible, a quiet shadow drowned by the sound. He was an artist, raw and restless, but broke. Every day was a scramble for rent, every painting a fight to make someone see him through the hustle and noise. His hands trembled from cold and hunger, his chest tightened with doubt. Society expected hustle, grit, toughness. But what if dreams weren't enough? What if hope was a debt too heavy? That afternoon, rain hammered the street like thunder against tin. Malik dashed under a cracked awning, breath ragged, fingers clutching a wet sketchbook. The neighborhood blurred, neon colors bleeding in puddles, umbrellas bobbing like ghosts. And then, out of nowhere, a man stepped beside him, dry and poised, like he belonged to a different world. Jonathan cut a striking figure. Tailored suit, polished shoes, his New York accent sharp as glass. He looked at Malik like he'd landed somewhere strange, yet familiar. Their eyes locked, curious, uncertain. Malik's heart thudded hard, a jagged rhythm he couldn't quiet. Jonathan's life was a different planet. He spoke of glass towers, endless parties, private jets slicing through clouds. Privileges Malik could barely dream of. The weight of his words pressed against Malik's ribs. Riches spilling like an ocean, tides powerful enough to drown or lift. But there was pain too, raw and bleeding beneath Jonathan's calm mask. A crisis that shattered everything he built. "Maybe fate brought me here," Jonathan said, eyes dark with secrets. "Maybe you can change my story, and I can change yours." The offer came sudden and loud, a deal dripping with glitter and danger. Money enough to erase Malik's debts, a chance to paint the city in new colors, but chained to Jonathan's world. Promises with shadows, chains disguised as freedom. Malik's mind spun. Was this the lifeline he prayed for, or a trap masked by luxury? Would the cost shatter the fragile dream he held so close? As rain hammered the street and distant saxophones wept, Malik felt the walls closing in tighter. His paintbrush trembled in his grip, weight pressing down like a boulder on his soul. In that cramped studio, surrounded by unfinished dreams and grim reality, Malik stood frozen. The choice smoldered in his chest, fiery and unknown. To accept meant more than just money. It was a turn in the road, one that could raise him or break him apart from who he truly was. The portrait of his future blurred, edges shifting, uncertain. Outside the window, the city pulsed on, brilliant, wild, waiting. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. A lot of subscribers have reported that YouTube removed their subscriptions without warning. Just take a quick look at that red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any of the exclusive content coming your way. And while you're here, hit that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's interact. Malik stood at the edge of decision, a storm of thoughts swirling in his head. Outside, the relentless rain drummed a steady beat, but inside him, uncertainty thundered louder. He could feel Jonathan's gaze, sharp, searching, and steady as it waited for an answer. But before Malik could respond, a scream pierced the city's hum, a sound so raw it shattered the moment. Eyes widened, they both turned toward the street. A figure stumbles from the shadows, drenched and wild, a woman clawing through the rain. Her clothes were tattered, and her hair whipped around her face like a curtain of chaos. "Help! Somebody help!" she cried, voice hoarse from panic, eyes wide as she reached for them. Fear gripped Malik's heart. Jonathan stepped forward, his confidence wavering. "Lady, what happened? Who are you?" But the words barely left his mouth when the woman lunged, collapsing at his feet. Her breath came in shudders, desperation carved into her features. "They're coming! You have to hide me, please!" Malik's body tensed. The air thickened with dread. The city that had once felt vibrant now pulsed with something dark, something unseen that made him shiver, despite the heat from the rain. "Who's coming?" Malik asked, taking an instinctive step back, the weight of Jonathan's deal suddenly feeling lighter, but eerie. Before she could respond, the sound of running footsteps echoed in the distance. Panic flickered in her eyes. She gasped. "They want to take me back. You don't understand." Jonathan's jaw clenched. "Take you where? You're safe here. Just tell us what happened." And then, as if on cue, a group of men emerged from the shadows, fierce and determined. They scanned the streets like hawks, searching for prey. The woman's eyes widened further, fear ripe enough to taste. They're bounty hunters," she breathed. "I escaped. You have to help me. They'll—" Suddenly one of the men spotted them, finger pointing. "There, get her!" The woman screamed, scrambling toward Malik and Jonathan. But before they could react, Jonathan stepped back, fear knitting his brow. "No, I can't be involved in this. You're crazy to want to help her." Malik turned to him, confusion twisting through his gut. "What are you talking about? She's begging for our help." But the other man surged forward, reaching for the woman, and instinct kicked in. Without thinking, Malik grabbed her arm, pulling her behind him like a shield. "You need to go," he shouted at her. "Get out, now." The moment felt surreal, time suspended as the tension hung thick. Jonathan looked ready to bolt. The suits and wealth, suddenly a burden he couldn't carry. The woman clutched Malik's wrist, her eyes pleading for salvation. Then, without warning, the first man lunged forward. Malik, caught off guard, felt himself pushed to the ground. A flash of his life, his struggles, his dreams, was eclipsed by a nightmarish realization. Jonathan stood back, frozen, facing a stupid choice: protect the woman or save his own skin. In that chaotic moment, the woman screamed again. "Wait, please, there's something you don't know." Malik's heart raced. Something hidden beneath her words, something that could change everything. The men advanced, shadows consuming the light around them. Everything was about to fracture their worlds, his promise, the life he never chose. But then the woman leaned close to Malik, breath shaky. "I'm not just a beggar. I'm your sister." The world spun. Malik's blood ran cold. The rain still poured, but inside his chest, a storm brewed. Questions stacked like bricks, each one heavier than the last. He looked at Jonathan, who wore a mask of disbelief, then back to the woman, searching her face for any sign of truth. The night thickened, and outside the window, the city pulsed on. Brilliant, wild, waiting. Malik stared at the woman, the world around them blurring into a haze. "Your sister?" he whispered, disbelief pooling in his gut. The rain pounded harder, drowning out the chaos, but that one word pierced through the noise. "Please, you have to believe me," she urged, eyes wide with fear and urgency. "I'm not just anyone. They want my blood. Don't you get it?" Before Malik could process her words, the men were on them. The street erupted into chaos as they surged forward, menacing shadows against the neon glow. Jonathan backed away, panic flashing across his face. "I'm not getting involved in this," he shouted, his voice cracking. Fear made him desperate, pushing him to the edge of the darkness. "Malik, we need to go, now!" Jonathan's voice became a sharp plea, but Malik felt rooted to the spot. Then a spark ignited within the chaos. The woman's hand slipped from Malik's grasp, darting toward the men. "Wait! Before you take me, you need to understand." Her voice cracked, each word a shove against fate. Malik's heart raced as the men hesitated, confusion flickering like a candle in the storm. It was just long enough for the woman to continue. "I am not just some victim. I am the last heir to the Blackwood estate." The words spilled out like shards of glass. "Everything they want is tied to me, but I have a choice. I can break the cycle." The men recoiled, eyes wide, shifting between her and Malik. "Blackwood?" one of them breathed, confusion morphing into greed. "You're lying!" But she wasn't. The recognition in their faces sent a wave of realization crashing over Malik. The Blackwoods were a dynasty, a name whispered. In black markets, a family steeped in both wealth and blood. He felt like the air had been knocked from his lungs. Jonathan looked from the men to the woman. "Wait, you can't be serious." His voice trembled. "You can't be related to them." "Why not?" She turned to Malik, desperation flooding her tone. "They took everything from us. They made every decision for us, but I escaped." Then came a laugh, jagged and dark, from one of the men who had lingered back. "Escape? You think it's that easy? You're just a piece on their board." Without warning, Malik felt the urge to leap forward, grab her and run. But the fear of betrayal tangled with the certainty of blood. The woman, he barely knew, said they were family. But could he trust her? "Why now?" he managed to say, throat tight. "Why are you here?" "Because they caught wind of my escape. They'll hunt me down, and if they find me—" Her words trailed off into choking sobs as the men pressed closer. "Enough of this," another man snarled, and the tension snapped. They surged forward, but something cracked in Malik's chest, surging with a strange pulse he didn't know. In that moment, the city erupted in screams and riots. A distant explosion rocked New Orleans, the rumble mingling with thunder, painting chaos in every direction. The streets shook, the ground trembling beneath their feet. "Do you feel that?" Malik shouted, an electric pulse sparking through him. "Get down!" A distant voice sounded, shouting orders as chaos enveloped them, the explosive sound intensifying, scattering people everywhere. In the midst of the chaos, the focus shifted. The men turned, faces stricken with terror. Jonathan's eyes widened, fear sparking like a firework, a sudden, shining epiphany of their situation. The world twisted around them. Malik, the woman, Jonathan. And for that moment, everything hung in the balance. The storm outside wasn't just the rain. And then came the next twist. Voices crying out, anger erupting. New Orleans was rebelling, and the streets would not be kind to anyone. "Run!" Malik shouted, grabbing her hand, the adrenaline rushing through him. As they turned to flee, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The woman looked back at him, eyes wide, urgency blending with something else. And in that fleeting moment, he wondered, what if she wasn't just his sister, but also a dangerous player in a game even he didn't understand? Whatever lay ahead, it would unravel everything they thought they knew. Malik grabbed the woman's hand as they burst into the chaos of the street. Rain poured harder now, drenching everything, slicking the cobblestones beneath their feet. He glanced back, heart pounding. Jonathan stood frozen, fear etched on his face, torn between the life he knew and the danger unfolding. "Come on!" Malik yelled, pulling the woman closer. He felt a jolt of energy surge through him, raw and instinctual, as they sprinted deeper into the storm. The cries of the fleeing. Crowds echoed around them, scattering shadows. The men hesitated, but only for a heartbeat. They were predators, scenting prey. Malik's mind swung wildly. Where could they hide? Just then, a flash of light, searing bright, cut through the rain. It was low, a spark, igniting the air like a lightning strike. "What was that?" the woman shouted, her voice trembling in the storm. A sound followed, thunder and blasts intermingled. Fear bubbled in the pit of Malik's stomach. Had someone fired a gun? Or was it something worse? His heart raced, faster than his feet could run. "Just keep going," he urged, and they weaved through panicked figures. Suddenly, screams erupted around them, piercing, filled with terror. Haywire chaos turned the street into a swirling mass of panic. Malik felt a mixture of dread and determination. He clenched the woman's hand tighter. "We have to get to the alley." They turned a corner, wet walls looming, graffiti splattering colors in the gloom. But as they lunged into the narrow passage, Malik skidded to a halt. His eyes went wide as the world around him darkened. The chaos behind them receding with a chilling clarity. "Why are you really here?" he yelled at the woman, desperation trickling down his spine. "You need to be honest with me." She looked back, and in that moment the truth bloomed, pain and regret flooding her gaze. "Because they're not just after me. They're after you, too." "What?" Panic rippled through him, but then she kept talking, words spilling forth, as if a dam had burst. "I'm not just your sister. I'm your twin." The weight of her confession hit him like a punch. Malik's heart sank deep as memories rushed back, of a childhood painted in shadows and whispered fears, a family fractured by secrets. "Twin?" he questioned, mouth dry. The city spun around him, viewing her through a lens he never expected. The warmth of childhood mingled with betrayal. He stepped back, heart tightening. Before he could process her words, the alley exploded in pandemonium. The bounty hunters flooded in, desperate anger on their faces, no longer lurking in the shadows, but spilling into the light. The rain didn't wash the fear away. It poured in torrents, drowning all that they had. The choices, the lives, the very trust they battled to build. "Grab her!" one of the men shouted, reaching for Malik's sister. The last flicker of hope, now blurring against the ugly reality. Without thinking, Malik's body moved like a reflex, the urge to protect overwhelming. "No!" he yelled. He lunged, pulled her close, but the man was faster. A grip on her arm, lifting her away. In that chaos, another voice cut through. A young woman stumbled into the scene, face pale, panic stark against the rain. "Stop! You don't know what you're doing." The men faltered, confusion mingling with greed. And suddenly, something was revealed. A small silver pendant glinting from the young woman's neck, the same as Malik's sister. "What?" Malik's mouth hung open. "Half-sister," the newcomer gasped, breathless, eyes darting between them. "I'm here for her." "No! No way!" Malik felt the ground beneath him shift. Anger and shock clashed inside. "You!" His sister turned, confusion morphing into a desperate understanding. "You have to listen." The danger before them melted away for a fleeting moment, as Malik's world cracked open. Secrets spun like a whirlwind, jolting him into an uncertain truth, while the chaos around them escalated. The rain fell harder, streaming down like the weight of lost time, of trust shattered. In that second, he realized nothing was what it seemed. The stakes were higher than he ever knew, intertwining lives buried under layers of lies. The chaos surged again, the men reeling towards them, ready to strike. Malik's breath hitched, uncertainty gripping him. What are we going to do? The echo of that question hung in the air as they stood together, vulnerable, with all their worlds crashing. They were bound by blood, twins connected by an unbreakable thread. But the future stretched out ahead, wide and wild, shrouded in uncertainty. What tethered them in trust was now a brittle cord, straining against the weight of their truths. And as Malik looked into the eyes of his sister, the ground beneath him felt less like soil and more like shifting sand, waiting to swallow them whole. The chaos swirled around them, rain mingling with fear. Malik looked deep into his sister's eyes, searching for a flicker of truth amid the confusion. "You can't just drop this on me. You're my twin?" "Yes," she pleaded, the desperation in her voice rising above the din. "We don't have time to question everything now. We need to move." But as they stood there, breaths heavy with the weight of revelation, Malik felt a sudden shift in the air. A chill swept through the alley, almost like the city itself held its breath. Then came a sound, a deep rumble reverberating through the ground below. Malik glanced back, instinctively tightening his grip on his sister's hand. "What now?" he murmured, eyes darting to the shadows creeping closer. The men halted too, confusion splashing across their faces. The thudding grew louder, but in that moment of hesitation, Malik's half-sister moved forward, her voice cutting through the tension. "You don't see it, do you? This city, it's been waiting for this." "What are you talking about?" Malik's heart raced, the beat pounding in his ears. "What do you mean?" She took a deep breath, the fear from earlier transforming into something more profound, something like determination. The Blackwoods, they have a plan, one bigger than anyone realizes. They're after power, and it's tied to you, to me. This isn't just about fleeing. This city is the battleground. And just as the words left her mouth, the ground shuddered again. Not from the storm, but something deeper. A tremor that sent debris scattering. "What the hell?" one of the men yelled, eyes wide with disbelief. But Malik barely registered their panic. All he could focus on was the concrete beneath him, palpable and alive, vibrating with something he couldn't understand. "Malik!" his sister cried, snapping him back. "It's now or never. They'll come for us both." The rain intensified, washing over them like a relentless tide. Shadows shifted behind Malik, darkening the alley. He turned to see a figure loom there, a face emerging from the darkness. An older man, with sharp features and a knowing smile that sent a wave of dread coursing through Malik. "Just in time, dear twins," the man said, his tone silky but cold. "I've been waiting for this reunion." "Who are you?" Malik's voice trembled, confusion mingling with fury. The man stepped forward, and Malik's heart sank as recognition coursed through him. "I'm your father. No, it's hard to comprehend, but it's true. Your mother hid you both well. The world stopped. Time stretched, and for a heartbeat, the pounding rain seemed to fade. No, that's impossible," Malik whispered, disbelief crashing over him like a wave. "We thought you were dead. I did everything to keep you safe," his father continued, an eerie calmness in his eyes. "But now it's time for you to reclaim what is yours." Shock twisted inside Malik, a mixture of betrayal and longing. "You don't understand. We need to stay away from the Blackwoods. They want her." But before he could process it all, Malik's sister shot back with fire in her voice. "You put us in danger. Why should we trust you?" "I'm not the enemy here," their father snapped, frustration fueling his words. "I can help you both, guide you, but you must trust me." The ground quaked again, and sirens wailed in the distance. In the storm's fury, the reality of their situation began to spin out of control. A tension thickened, and Malik felt torn in every direction. Doubt and fear clashed with hope, leaving him gasping for clarity amid a swirl of chaos. Who could he trust? What was the truth? As the shadows closed in, and uncertainty gripped him tighter than ever, one thought loomed large. Was he ready to take a leap into the darkness? Or was this the moment their lives, as they knew them, would fracture forever? The storm screamed around them, the city standing on the precipice of change. Malik felt the air humming with tension, his heartbeat echoing in his ears. His father stood towering before them, cloaked in shadows with that knowing smile, while the rain drummed a wild symphony against the alley walls. Confusion tangled with anger, pulling Malik in all directions, while his half-sister's revelation shook the very foundation of his identity. But just then, the ground quaked again, but this time it felt different, stronger. The dark figure of his father began to move forward, but Malik couldn't focus on anything but the shifting ground. It pulsed like a heartbeat beneath his feet. "What's happening?" Malik shouted over the noise, pulling his sister closer. "I don't know," she yelled back. But just as she spoke, a blinding shockwave erupted from the alley entrance. Light, fierce and radiant, poured forth, illuminating their surroundings with an unnatural brightness. "Get back!" someone screamed, but it was too late. The explosion was deafening. A flash of white swallowed everything. Blackened walls, crumbling bricks, the frigid rain. Malik stumbled forward, thrown aside by the force. He hit the pavement hard, winded, gasping for breath. In that instant, time stretched and reality fractured. The street exploded with chaos. Shouts and screams twisted into one cacophony of terror. As he fought to gather himself, Malik blinked through the dust and smoke. Shapes moved in the haze. The figures of his sister, his father, the men, all jumbled together in a mess of limbs and fear. His sister's scream sliced through the tumult. "Malik, help!" He pushed himself upright. His heart sank. The shadows around them morphed, lighting up as more people emerged from the smoke. Figures clad in dark uniforms. They moved with ruthless precision, intent on capturing the chaos. But then something else struck Malik. Why are there so many of them? He wondered aloud, confusion creeping in. These weren't just bounty hunters. They were organized, military-like. Their faces were cloaked in masks, eyes cold and calculating. And then the unthinkable happened. One of the masked figures lifted an arm and pointed directly at Malik's father. "Target confirmed. Bring him in." Malik's stomach dropped. What do they want with him? "Malik, run!" his half-sister yelled, and he turned just in time to see her being dragged away by one of the masked figures. "No, let her go!" Malik lunged, reaching for their hand, but another figure pushed him back. The world spun as he struggled, helpless against the tide. "Stay away from her!" Malik shouted, but the air was thick with chaos. He couldn't think straight, adrenaline pumping through his veins. Then the sound of gunfire rang out, sharp, echoing. The masked soldiers advanced faster, moving like shadows in the storm. Malik's breath caught in his throat as he glanced back at his father, who now stood rigid and defiant. "Don't let them take you," his father yelled, voice steady amidst the chaos. But even as he spoke, a strange flicker crossed his face. A flash of fear that made Malik's heart ache. "What is going on?" Malik cried again, desperately seeking answers. But before he could grasp anything, a worst-case picture painted itself in his mind. A detonating roar filled the air, and just like that, everything shattered. The ground erupted, the battered earth split open beneath them, gaping wide and fiery. Flames licked the sky, painting it a vivid red, illuminating the darkness. "Malik!" his half-sister screamed, her voice lost in the chaos. The world spun and tilted, falling into darkness. For a heartbeat, when the dust cleared, he saw his father push against the chaos, fighting to get to him. But it was too late. The ground split wider, swallowing the figures whole. The bounty hunters, the soldiers, his father, and his sister. Malik staggered back, breath hitching. They were gone, just like that, a mind-numbing void of loss. And the truth hit him harder than he could bear. The whispers that had encircled his life weren't just shadows of the past. They were chains, holding him to something buried deep, something terrible that was now clawing its way to the surface. His father's secret, the ties to the Blackwoods, they all threatened to unfold like a nightmare. And as the last echoes of screams faded into silence, Malik stood trembling, heart heavy with uncertainty, stuck between a past he didn't know and a future he couldn't see. The world outside still churned, but for Malik, everything had changed. A rupture that could not be healed unfurled, leaving nothing but a gaping chasm where his family had stood. He felt the true weight of betrayal creep in, the revelation looming like a storm cloud over New Orleans. Would his blood tie him to the past or pull him forward into a fate darker than he imagined? The choices he had to make now were more dangerous than every decision before, and the question echoed in his mind with each passing moment. cold and ruthless. What did it mean to be a Blackwood? Malik stood in the ruins of what had been his life just moments before, heart pounding in a rhythm of disbelief. Smoke curled around him, fading the outlines of the alley and masking the faces that had just vanished. He was left, staring into a void where hope and family had been, the rain washing over him, but unable to cleanse the dread pooling in his chest. "Malik!" A voice pierced through the haze. It was his half-sister's voice, echoing, distant and desperate. He whipped around, searching through the shadows, while the chaos faded like the memory of the storm. The remnants of the explosion still crackled in the air, sending jolts of panic spiraling through his body. But then, like a cruel trick of fate, another figure emerged from the smoke. It wasn't his father or his sister, but another man, older, dressed in similar dark garb, face hidden behind a mask. He moved with purpose, weaving through the confusion like he knew exactly what was happening, and Malik's breath caught again. "Get back," Malik shouted, instinct screaming, but it wasn't the masked man that the returning thoughts gravitated toward. It was the way the shadows shifted. Each flicker brought life back to the memories of betrayal. The air suddenly thickened, and Malik froze, an icy chill crawling up his spine. "Who are you?" Malik demanded, voice tremulous. "What do you want?" But before the stranger could answer, the world around him shifted again. There was a flash, a blinding light that cut through the alley. But this wasn't from the chaos. No, this was shiny and beckoning. It was hypnotic and momentarily stole away the sting of grief. Malik squinted, almost shielded his eyes, wondering if he was seeing things. The masked man stepped forward, dragging something behind him. It was a large, ornate box, shiny and wrapped in crimson ribbons. It looked out of place amidst the destruction, almost too beautiful to exist. The man dropped the box at Malik's feet, a sinister grin creeping across his face. "Your family left you a gift," he said, words dripping with malice. Malik's heart raced, anger boiling inside him as confusion knotted his thoughts. "What's in there?" he breathed. Fear and intrigue battling for supremacy. The man's eyes glinted behind the mask. "Open it." He hesitated, torn between dread and fascination, but as seconds stretched into eternity, he felt compelled to reach out. With trembling hands, he tugged at the ribbons. As they fell away, the box burst open with a creak, revealing an array of photographs and documents, memories spilling forth like secrets untold. Malik's heart sank as he flipped through the stack. Images of his mother, his father, but there were others, men and women he didn't recognize, standing at the edge of grand estates, faces twisted with smiles that seemed hollow. And in the midst of these pictures was one of him, taken long before he ever registered its capture. A shadowed figure held him as a baby, an imposing presence racked tightly with a glimmer of pride. "Who are they?" Malik stammered, horrified. "Your true legacy," the masked man smirked. "You're not just blood. You're the key." The words hit Malik like a punch, stealing the breath from his lungs. "Key to what?" But then echoes of distant sirens crept back, reminding him of the danger surrounding them. However, as he stared at the images, something unexpected caught his eye. A symbol, a family crest embossed on the documents. It had been buried in his memories, recognized, but not accepted. This was the Blackwood crest. "Stop it," Malik yelled, suddenly understanding. "I've nothing to do with that." The masked figure stepped closer, pulling back his hood to reveal a familiar face, marred by a past Malik thought he'd left behind. "Wrong," his father said, voice low and heavy. "You are part of this. All of it." Staring into a face that mirrored his own, but carried decades of burden and secrecy, Malik felt the ground shift beneath him once more. In that moment, the truth came crashing down, unrelenting and icy. Not only was he not just the victim, he was the very heartbeat of a family tied to darkness and power, a legacy he never wanted. A storm brewed inside him, shaking the very core of who he thought he was. "No," he shouted, stepping back. "I won't be a pawn in your game." But the mask was back on, lips curling into a cruel smile. "Oh, Malik, you already are." And just like that, the alley swirled into a tempest of doubt. Revealing the truth was only the beginning. The stakes were higher than he'd ever known, and all he thought he'd lost was just the tip of a much darker iceberg looming close. The rain streamed down in torrents, blurring his vision, but clarity would not come. Only shadows stretched ahead, tangled in a web of fate that thickened with every passing heartbeat. Malik stared at his father, the flood of photographs in his hands heavy with implications. The air around them crackled, as if charged with electricity. Every instinct told him to recoil, to run. But he was frozen, trapped in this storm of revelations, as the masked man enjoyed the unfolding chaos. Then came a sound that shook the very foundation of his thoughts. A low rumble, deep and guttural. The ground beneath him shuddered violently, vibrating like a live wire. Just as his mind raced to comprehend what was happening, the darkness shifted again. A figure burst through the smoke, lunging forward with sudden speed. It was another one of the masked soldiers, eyes wide and frantic. "We have to go, now," he shouted, his voice straining against the rising chaos. Malik's heart raced. "What are you talking about?" But the soldier pushed past him, dragging Malik's father back into the cloud of confusion. "The plan is compromised. We have to evacuate." What plan? Panic clawed at Malik's throat. He couldn't grasp what was happening. The world spiraled. Images of his father's smiling face mixed with shadows of betrayal. Just when it seemed everything was tumbling down, the soldier turned, and Malik caught a glimpse of a familiar insignia on his uniform. A serpent entwined with a crown. "No," Malik breathed, understanding dawning like the morning sun cracking through dark clouds. "You're with them." The soldier hesitated, but the urgency of the moment loomed larger. "There's no time," he repeated, but Malik felt the blood drain from his face. His world spun anew. "They wanted me to stay in the dark," Malik burst out, realization hitting like sharp daggers. "All along, this was a setup." The masked man laughed, stepping forward. "Welcome to the game, Malik. It's been set long before you were born." Just then, an explosion echoed from beyond the alley, shaking the earth. In that moment of chaos, Malik felt a surge of anger and confusion. He couldn't process any more who was on his. But before he could react, a flash blinded him. A bright light erupted from the box at his feet. It sparkled like fireworks, engulfing everything in a brilliant glow. Malik stepped back, horror widening his eyes. The photographs lifted from the box, swirling around him like frantic birds, their clarity shining through the grime and fear. "Look," the soldier yelled, pointing. "It's activating." "What do you mean, activating?" Malik shouted. But it was too late. The air hummed thick with energy, vibrating deeply inside him. His sister's scream rang clear amidst the chaos. "Malik, help!" He staggered forward, the world blurring. He couldn't breathe, with the weight of truth bearing down on him. The soldiers retreated slightly, their eyes wild with fear, drawn to the light. Then, with another blinding flash, the ground split open. A dark chasm yawned, swallowing debris and shadows alike. Malik reached out for his sister's hand, but the forces surrounding them pulled tighter. The next moment shattered all semblance of logic. From the depths of the chasm, a figure rose, a woman draped in swirling shadows and energy. Malik felt a connection deep within him, pulling at emotions he couldn't define. She wasn't just any woman. She radiated power, regal and commanding. "I am the keeper," she declared, her voice echoing with centuries of resonance. "Your blood ties stretch beyond the bounds of this world." "Who are you?" Malik gasped, the very fabric of reality shifting around him. With piercing eyes, she leaned forward. "You, Malik, are tied to a legacy beyond your imagination. You can choose to follow in the footsteps of your ancestors, or turn away from the darkness. Choose wisely, for this path leads to the truth of who you are." Before he could respond, the box exploded with energy, sending waves crashing outward. In that moment, the looming darkness pulled at Malik. The shadows and secrets of his family came flooding back, intertwined and complex. Malik was left gasping, the bruised reality of his life shattered in an instant, leaving him to grapple with a truth even more shocking than anything before. This wasn't just about escaping a legacy. It was about claiming it or redefining it. He looked to the keeper, to the chaos, to the soldiers. Confusion swirling. And then it hit him. Could he really choose? Or was the choice already made? As the world collapsed around them into vibrant chaos, Malik felt chained to a destiny he never wanted. Time slowed as he stood at the edge of the abyss, questions burning like fire in his heart. What lay ahead was not just danger, it was a confrontation with himself, and everything he thought he knew crumbled beneath the weight of that truth. The choices stretched out into an uncertain future, keeping him teetering on the brink of something greater, something terrifying. The air crackled with electric tension as Malik stared at the keeper, the world looming like a fragile whisper on the brink of chaos. His mind raced, heart pounding harder than the rain pounding on the pavement. He felt tied to every secret that danced around him, hidden truths and histories that turned his stomach. Then, without warning, the swirling light pulsed again, snapping into focus. The keeper's dark eyes flickered with urgency. "Choose, Malik. Choose or be consumed." But before he could respond, the ground erupted beneath him. A fissure split open wider, yawning like a monster, ready to swallow everything whole. The cacophony surged, a tidal wave of fear and noise cresting around them. Malik barely registered the masked soldiers recoiling, fear flickering across their faces like shadows in a dying light. The figures of his father and half-sister were caught within the chaos, their forms growing distant. "No!" Malik yelled, reaching for them. Then, everything changed, in an instant. A scream ripped through the dark, sharper than the explosions around them. A hooded figure plunged out of the shadows. A woman dressed in black, her face obscured by a veil. She moved with the speed of lightning, reaching for the box at Malik's feet. "Stop her!" someone shouted. But the words were lost in the chaos. Malik was frozen, staring as this mysterious woman yanked the box open. The light burst forth in a dazzling explosion, brighter than any before. The photographs whirled up into the air, suspended like leaves caught in a storm. "What are you doing?" Malik shouted, panic clawing at his throat. But the woman's eyes were locked on the swirling images. "You need to know the truth," she cried, a fierce determination coloring her voice. She swept a hand through the air, and as if responding to an unspoken command, the photographs flew toward Malik, each one piercing him with memories he didn't know existed. He stumbled backward, hands clutching his head as images unfolded. His mother, young and radiant, standing beside the same man from the masked figure's history. Each photo revealed a dark secret, layered like cake, until Malik's heart shattered with raw realization. There was betrayal etched in each face. "Those aren't just memories, they're your past," the woman screamed, urgency pushing her voice to breaking. "Your family has kept this from you to protect, to control you." Malik felt the truth like a blade in his chest. "No," he shouted, refusing to accept it. "You're lying." But she pressed on, shaking her head fervently. "You were born into power, Malik. You are the Blackwood legacy. Your blood means something." His mind reeled, and it was then that realization kicked hard into his gut. As the photographs danced around him, one stood out, a wedding photo, a radiant couple in elegant attire. He recognized the groom immediately. It was his father. But his stomach turned when he focused on the bride, a familiar woman with striking features, eyes that mirrored his own. It was his mother. "Impossible," he breathed, the world spinning faster. She married a Blackwood?" "Yes," the woman snapped. "Your mother chose to protect you from this life, but they took her from you. She feared for your safety." His father's eyes met his, filled with a blend of fear and conviction. "Malik, listen," he yelled over the crackling energy. "We've fought to protect you from our legacy." But there was no time to digest the truth. The ground vibrated violently. The air drew tight, as if the universe itself sensed the upheaval. Malik stumbled, struggling to stay upright as the chamber of broken focus collapsed around him. The figures of soldiers began to scatter, retreating into the shadows from whence they came. And suddenly, in that moment, another light erupted through the chaos. The explosion was blinding. Malik shielded his eyes, and when he opened them, again, he found himself standing alone, in a quiet void, echoes of tumult fading behind. The vibrant colors of the city dimmed to gray, and all he could hear was the thrum of his own heartbeat. "Where are you?" he called, voice cracking. "Is anyone there?" In the silence, something shifted. A figure appeared at the edge of the darkness. It was the keeper, but now she wore a twisted smile, one that shook him to his core. "Welcome, Malik," she purred, voice smooth as silk. "You now face the beginning of your true legacy." And just like that, Malik felt the darkness coiling around him, the past, present, and the future humming in an eerie harmony. Everything he thought he knew about family, about himself, was teetering at the edge. His heart raced as doubt crept back in. Maybe it wasn't just about choosing his destiny. Maybe he had been a pawn in a game far larger than than he could comprehend. And now, he stood on the precipice of that very game, with its rules twisting like shadows. Staring into the keeper's eyes, Malik couldn't shake the feeling that the truth lay just beyond his reach. Just another dark mystery he needed to uncover. What if everything he thought was real was an illusion, designed to entrap him in ways he couldn't yet see? The city swirled around him a breath away. The storm still raged on, brilliant, wild, waiting. Malik felt the pull of the abyss around him, a maelstrom of pain and chaos swirling in the depths. The keeper's eyes pierced through the storm. "Malik, you stand at a crossroads. Choose your path." A gasp erupted from Malik. The memories flashed again, the images swirling, each one revealing his past. The truth crashed over him like a tidal wave. "You're telling me I can't escape this? That this is my destiny?" "Destiny can be shaped, not just accepted," she replied, voice firm but soft. "But you must act. Now." He couldn't shake the weight of everything he was learning. The specter of his family's legacy lingered in the air, thick and suffocating. The photos settled around him, shimmering like scattered stars. Malik reached for them, longing to understand, but fear whispered, urging him to flee. A rumble echoed, shaking the ground further. The shadows around him writhed, pulsing with energy. There was no escape from this truth. The only way forward was through it. "What if I refuse?" Malik challenged. The keeper stepped closer, the storm fading in her calm. "Refusal is a path too, but it may lead to darkness. You will lose yourself." Malik's heart raced, thoughts screaming for clarity. Then his father's voice resonated through the chaos. "Malik! We're running out of time. If we don't leave now, we'll be trapped in this cycle forever." His father's urgency mixed with the flickering images, and suddenly Malik knew he had to act. He turned to the keeper. "If I step into this legacy, can I control it? Can I change it?" "Yes," she urged, her eyes gleaming with power. "You hold the potential to rewrite history, to make it yours." Breath hitching, Malik glanced back at his father and half-sister, tangled in uncertainty and urgency. "What do I do?" "Follow your heart," the keeper whispered. "Trust in your blood." A sudden roar surged through the air, as fierce as a lion's growl. Malik nodded, adrenaline building. He stepped forward, the chasm quaking beneath him. Hovering at the edge of the unknown. "I'm ready." He reached for the swirling light of the box. Images surged in, visages of his mother, faces of allies yet to be met, shadows of foes yet to be faced, coalesced into a destiny he was finally willing to embrace. He inhaled deeply, the weight lifting from his shoulders. Here was clarity in confusion. He could be more than the Blackwood legacy. He could redefine what it meant. The light expanded, enveloping him in warmth and purpose. "Together," Malik breathed, heart racing, "we can take control." At that moment, the ground erupted. Colors exploded in a brilliant dance of light. Faces, places, futures melded. The darkness flickered and began to recede. Whispers turned into shouts of joy. Malik pulled his father and sister close, feelings raging in his heart like a wildfire. "Let's break this chain," he declared, staring into the keeper's eyes, which reflected hope within the storm. "We change our fate. Together." The world burst into light, and the power of their combined resolve sent ripples across the city. Everything melded and shifted until, with one final spark, they erupted into a new reality, one not bound by the past, but laden with choices ahead. And in the heart of that chaos, Malik understood. Choices could redefine everything: his legacy, his family, himself. But in that very moment, an echo whispered back, a mysterious chuckle in the distance. As they emerged, the fight wasn't over. Their journey had only just begun. Paths intertwined like roots. Malik grinned, determination igniting in his chest. "Come on," he shouted, grasping his sister's hand tightly. "Let's see what this future holds." But before they could step fully into the light, the keeper's voice lingered, a final, cryptic reminder, haunting yet bright. "Remember, the choices lie not just in blood, but in heart." The scene began to fade, engulfed by light, but a question hung in the air, unanswered, suspended in brilliant energy. What awaited them beyond the chaos of their past? And how would they shape the family they'd been given? You need to subscribe now to catch every twist and turn of the upcoming adventures. This is the moment to show your support. Smash that like button now. I want to hear your thoughts. Flood the comments section with your reactions and wildest theories about this ending. And do not wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this finale. Only true fans understand the importance of building this journey together.